The Indian Ocean lay dark and deceptively still, its surface rippling with the slow, rhythmic breaths of a sea that had witnessed centuries of conflict, but rarely anything like this. Under a sky fading from orange to bruised purple, an orange lifeboat the size of a small car drifted alone, carrying 4 armed Somali pirates and 1 American hostage whose fate had become the center of global attention, Captain Richard Phillips. He sat bound and dehydrated, wrists cut from rope burn, surrounded by men whose desperation had metastasized into volatility. Their AK-47s clattered against the fiberglass walls each time a wave struck. Sweat and tension mixed into a suffocating heat inside the sealed capsule. Every movement, every breath, every shift in mood drew Phillips closer to death. A short distance away, dwarfing the tiny lifeboat like a steel giant, the USS Bainbridge cut slowly through the water. Its deck lights cast long reflections over the waves, silent, patient, unblinking. This was no longer a rescue attempt. This was containment. The situation had spiraled far beyond negotiation. The pirates were exhausted, paranoid, dehydrated, and cornered. That meant one thing: unpredictability. The world watched as the crisis entered its 4th day. Inside the Bainbridge, the on-scene commander studied the lifeboat through binoculars. The pirates were agitated, shouting, pacing, arguing among themselves. Several times they shoved Phillips toward the exit hatch, rifles pressed against his neck. Each incident tightened the clock. Every analyst, negotiator, and officer aboard the destroyer saw the same reality forming. The mission was slipping away. They needed a solution that didn't exist, until the words finally came. Launch DevGru. In the dead of night, Tier 1 SEAL operators parachuted into the open ocean and were recovered by RHIBs. They boarded the destroyer quietly, efficiently, carrying gear bags filled with tools built for missions where failure wasn't an option. Among them were 3 snipers, men trained for hostage shots so precise they bordered on impossible. But even they understood the grim truth as they studied the lifeboat rocking violently at the end of its tow line. This wasn't going to be a clean mission. This wasn't going to be controllable. This was going to be a last resort. And if they failed, Richard Phillips would die. The SEAL operators moved across the deck of the USS Bainbridge with the controlled urgency of men who had rehearsed chaos their entire careers. Their gear was soaked with seawater from the nighttime parachute insertion, yet none of them showed even a flicker of discomfort. Missions like this weren't about comfort. They were about precision, discipline, and accepting that a single mistake could end a life. The snipers from SEAL Team 6 set up on the fantail of the destroyer, choosing firing positions with the ocean winds in mind. They laid out sandbags, stabilized bipods, and aligned scopes capable of reading a heartbeat at distance. These weren't conventional snipers. They were Tier 1 hostage rescue marksmen, trained to take shots at moving targets, at unstable angles, with a hostage inches away. But as they watched the lifeboat sway violently at the end of the tow line, all 3 men saw the same nightmare unfolding. The target wasn't just moving, it was rotating, dipping, jerking unpredictably. And inside it, Captain Phillips was never still. He was pushed, pulled, repositioned constantly by pirates who were unraveling mentally. Negotiators tried to prolong the standoff, but time was eroding everything. The pirates were running low on fresh water. Their cat-induced highs had crashed into paranoid agitation. Their leader, Muse, was becoming increasingly desperate. And inside that boiling capsule, Phillips had no protection, no distance, no margin. The SEAL commander briefed his men repeatedly, refining every possible scenario. Fast rope insertion? Too loud, too slow, too dangerous for a hostage pressed against armed captors. Explosive breaching on the lifeboat hatch? Guaranteed fatal for Phillips. Even approaching with RHIBs risked triggering panic. There was only one realistic option, and it fell entirely on the sniper team. But even that option had a deadly flaw. The rules of engagement required all pirates to be neutralized simultaneously. If even one survived long enough to pull a trigger, Phillips would die. That meant 3 shooters, 3 targets, 1 instant. No verbal commands, no second attempt. And the window? It only existed if the pirates happened to align perfectly for a split second, something no one could force. Hours dragged by. The sun beat down relentlessly. Tension stretched thin across the destroyer. Then the pirates began arguing violently. One shoved Phillips, another raised his AK-47. The SEALs knew the moment was coming, and when it did, they had one chance. Just one. The three pirates clung to Phillips like a human shield, screaming threats into the radio as the lifeboat rocked violently. Their fingers tightened around the triggers. One wrong move, one unexpected wave, and the captain would die before anyone could react. Inside the sniper tower on the Bainbridge, the SEALs slowed their breathing to a crawl. They weren't just fighting physics anymore. They were fighting time. The sun was dipping. Shadows were lengthening across the water. Light was dying, and with it, their margin for error. A Navy negotiator radioed again, voice steady but hollowed by exhaustion. "We want to resolve this peacefully." The reply was a burst of rage, followed by a gun cocking. Peace was dead. Back inside the lifeboat, Phillips's wrists burned under the rope bindings. He could feel the panic rising in his throat. He buried it. The pirates were unraveling. Their paranoia was now a living thing in the cramped, sweltering space. Every time the boat swung, Phillips could see the faint silhouette of the SEALs on the destroyer. He didn't know what they were waiting for. He didn't know if a rescue was even possible, but he trusted that if the SEALs were there, the fight wasn't over. On the Bainbridge, the call came through. "Green light. If you get the shot, take it." The world seemed to shrink to the width of a rifle scope. The snipers exhaled as one. They weren't aiming at silhouettes. They were aiming at heartbeats. The lifeboat jerked on a wave, and for a fraction of a second, all three pirates lined up perfectly. That was all the SEALs needed. 3 triggers pressed, 3 rifles bucked, 3 sonic cracks tore through the wind. In less than a heartbeat, it was over. The lifeboat rocked again. But this time, for the first time in days, Phillips was alive, and the threat was dead. For a moment, no one on the Bainbridge moved. The shots had been so clean, so precise, that reality struggled to catch up. The 3 snipers kept their eyes locked in their scopes, muscles frozen, waiting for any sign of movement, any hint they had missed something. There was none. Then, through the drifting smoke and trembling heat rising from the water, they saw it. Captain Phillips, alive, stunned, blinking at a world he wasn't sure he was still part of. The destroyer erupted in controlled chaos. Rescue teams sprinted to the RHIBs. Medics grabbed gear. Officers barked orders through clenched teeth. Every second mattered. The mission wasn't over until Phillips was safely in their hands. The small craft launched from the Bainbridge and knifed across the water toward the crippled lifeboat. As they approached, the SEALs kept their weapons raised, scanning for any concealed threats. The pirates were motionless, each struck with surgical precision. 1 shot per target, exactly as doctrine demanded, but almost never as reality allowed. Phillips was shaking. From dehydration, exhaustion, and the sudden collapse of a nightmare he had braced himself to die in. The SEALs cut him free, pulled him out, and carried him into the RHIB. He kept repeating, voice hoarse, "You got them! You got them!" On the return to the destroyer, the ocean breeze hit him like a shock. The horizon looked impossibly wide. He hadn't seen open water in days, only the cramped coffin of the lifeboat and the eyes of men who wanted him dead. As the RHIB approached the Bainbridge, sailors lined the deck in silence. Not ceremony, respect. They all knew how close this had come to ending differently. They all knew how impossible the shot had been. When Phillips' boots touched the steel deck, the SEALs stepped back and let him breathe. He stared at the men who had saved him, anonymous behind their gear, unreadable behind their discipline. And he understood instinctively that they didn't want thanks. They wanted him to live. That was enough. And somewhere on the sniper tower, the 3 shooters finally lowered their rifles. Their mission had lasted only seconds, but those seconds had rewritten everything.